and we can now go live. Going live, going live, going live. We are live. All right. Hey there, students. Tom Richey here, and it is time for some APUSH review. We've got this exam coming out tomorrow, and I tell you, it has been a week. APUSH and AP Euro in the exact same week. So with that, let me go ahead and just a few words from our sponsors. Now, first of all, I'm going to let y'all know I will be on Marco Learning's channel at 7:30. Okay, so this is going to go close to an hour, and I'm going to shift to Marco Learning at 7:30. Now, a few things that I want y'all to know. We got a lot of stuff going on because I've got to go from here to, AP Euro and all of that kind of stuff. Now, I will tell you, for those of you, I will tell y'all, if you're on the East Coast, you need to go to bed at 10, okay? But for those of you that are on like the West Coast, you're in a later time zone, or if you're one of those people on the East Coast, you know that you're not going to go to bed anyway. I'm having a fireside chat, okay, along the lines of FDR. I'm having a fireside chat, later on this evening. Just created this thing. So that's going to be at 11 p.m. It'll last at least an hour. Now, this is a premium thing. There could be only 5 or 6 people in there, and that's fine. I may be in there with 5, 6, 10 people, but the fireside chat is just going to be a small group kind of thing. And for some people who just won't go to bed, it's actually a way that I've seen that I actually can put the person at ease, answer their remaining questions, get them in bed before midnight. Okay. But again, East Coasters, you should be going to bed around 10 o'clock. Okay. So with that, I'm not trying to keep you up. I know who my target audience is, people in the other time zones, or somebody who just is frantic and they just won't go to bed. So anyway, that is a premium event. If you're on YouTube, there is a link in the description. Okay. I will put a link in the Crowdcast chat. Now, note also Romulus APUSH review is available at the App Store. It's a little $2.99 trivia app. Now, again, these are not stimulus-based questions. These are just straight up trivia questions, straight up, just drill it down so that when you're taking the SAQs, the LEQ, that specific knowledge is not evading you, okay? Because people who have more trivial knowledge, they tend to do better on tests, especially on the SAQs and the LEQ, where you're going, you even need specific evidence on the DBQ. So again, that's at the App Store, Google Play, just a little $2.99 app. So just be aware. Now, also, I have the APUSH Spring Symposium sessions where I did like 5 to 6 hours going over the multiple choice, the SAQ, the LEQ, the DBQ. That is in the YouTube subscription with a promo code Classroom10 that will get you all of those sessions for just $10. So if you're one of those people that you're like, hey, I still don't know how to write an essay or something like that, I can't teach you how to write an essay on this stream here right now. Okay, I got a lot of questions answered. We're not going to be able to teach you how to write an essay, but if you want to look at those spring symposium sessions, again, that's a 4-session thing I did over the weekend, and since it already happened, you can have it for $10. Okay, so just remember fireside chat tonight at 11 p.m. That's a small group thing. Okay, it'll be a small group in there. And then, of course, we've got Romulus APUSH review, a handy little trivia app for your phone. And then remember, if you need to get in depth into the exam stuff tonight, I would recommend that Spring Symposium, because I literally go from beginning to end on a DBQ. I go on for about 2 hours on how to analyze documents and how to do all these things for the DBQ, how to get complex understanding, all of that. So understand that most of what I'm going to do in this session and in my session with Marco Learning in a bit, we're going to be getting over content and trying to answer questions. So as far as that goes, let's go ahead and see what we've got here. And I need to remember to sing for y'all too, right? Maybe we can do the Henry Clay American System song. That might be a good thing. So remind me that I agreed to do that. So with that, now again, one thing that I would much rather go over, try not to use numbered periods, because those things, the exam never mentions a numbered period. So if you want me to talk about like a particular topic, if there's a topic that you want me to touch on, a specific thing that you need something, but when I see something like that, can I go through period 7, this kind of bare minimum asking questions, I'll be more likely to ignore that. Okay. So as far as that goes, can I go over the important parts of the Gilded Age? Okay. Claudia, I appreciate that, giving me a time period to kind of look at. So the thing is, the Gilded Age, the so-called Gilded Age. Now, this comes from the great American author Mark Twain. Okay, yes, and this is evening coffee. Don't try this at home, kids. So Mark Twain comes up with this idea of the Gilded Age. Now, of course, this is his kind of way to refer to this time. And gilded is something, of course, that it's got gold on the outside, but it's not so good in there. Now, one thing we want to note from the course and exam description, the Gilded Age is a terrible time to be poor. But then again, what time is good to be poor? But the Gilded Age, bad. They didn't have like, Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid and all of those other things, no Head Start, no Great Society. But at the same time, what we want to understand about the Gilded Age, and this is in the course and exam description, it's not just a handful of rich people getting rich and everybody else getting poor. Okay, there is also a massive expansion of the American middle class. Okay, so understand that the prosperity also, when we talk about like John D. Rockefeller, for example, okay, when we're talking about Rockefeller, when we're thinking about that, that is, Rockefeller, as much as Ida Tarbell may not particularly care for some of his competitive business practices, John D. Rockefeller is actually making oil cheaper for the consumer, okay, that people's lives are better off. So, when we look at the Gilded Age, after the Civil War, now part of this was due to, the secession and Southern congressmen leaving Congress. And now the Republicans are like, we can finally start working on building business. Okay. So during the Gilded Age, the government policy. Okay. So, Gilded Age, let me do something real quick. Okay, so this is something I want to note here, okay, that I'm going to go into in a second, that government policy is focusing on assisting big business, okay, that big business, we need to work on business. Before the Civil War, the backbone of the economy was agriculture and the cotton boom in the South, and that sort of thing. But the economy is moving from agriculture to industry, and that is something that is very important to note. Now, I'm going to share once in a while some tutoring documents here that I think are going to be helpful. Okay, so what I'm going to note here is, Gilded Age economy notes. Okay, so Gilded Age economy notes. Okay, and these are just basically informal tutoring notes, and I'll go ahead and share those in the chat as well. Gilded Age economy notes. Okay, so these are some things, these are just some tutoring notes that I think will be of help to folks that are out there. So, and remember, I'm going to be doing a fireside chat, premium fireside chat at 11 p.m. Eastern. Okay, if anybody wants to join me for that. And again, I don't care if that's just 5 or 10 people. Okay, that is going to be fine with me. All right, so that's something to make a note of there. And so going here is, let's see, we're going to pin that message that, well, let's see, we're going to just something real quick there. All right, just got to get into the YouTube, make sure I'm putting things on the YouTube there. All right, so error try. Oh, they're going to term limit me. I think that they said that was too many. That even applies to the host. Okay, so okay. And remember, that's going to be a pretty small audience there, but I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. So let me go ahead and share my screen. And this document that I'm sharing here was the Gilded Age laissez-faire, or to what extent was the Gilded Age laissez-faire? And if you can't access this right now, you'll be able to look at it later, okay? So evaluate the extent to which laissez-faire economics influenced the policies of the United States government from 1865 to 1900. Now, I sometimes have a problem. I don't like referring to the Gilded Age as laissez-faire because I think it's something that's backward looking. I think when people use this term, what they're saying is there was little regulation of large corporations in comparison to the 20th and 21st centuries. So if we look back to the Jacksonian era, that's laissez-faire. When Jackson's like, hey, we're going to take apart this bank and we're just going to kill it. That is laissez-faire. So little regulation compared to later, no income tax, social Darwinism and the gospel of wealth, social Darwinism discouraged high taxes on the rich. It discouraged social welfare programs that were basically, going to result in taxing the rich and taking away from the people who are producers. Now, one thing about social Darwinism isn't just like, hey, poor people, die, okay? Social Darwinism says that, look, society is better off when we let the producers produce, okay? So when you think about Rockefeller, Standard Oil, people before Rockefeller, like you might be lighting up your kerosene lamp and then boom, like all of a sudden your house blows up, okay? Because if the oil wasn't properly refined, then it's like, bam, your house blew up. So the thing is that, Rockefeller, Standard Oil, the oil can meet a standard. And so from there, it meets a standard. I know it's good. And Rockefeller brought down the price of oil. Andrew Carnegie, steel is going all over the place. The mass production of steel allows for the railroads to go all over the country, for skyscrapers to be built. So again, when we think of this term Gilded Age, just note, yes, Jacob Riis is taking real pictures of real poor people in New York. It is a very, very bad time to be, poor and an urban immigrant and living in those tenements. But we also want to understand this is a time of a lot of progress. But the other thing that we want to note here is that in a lot of ways, the Gilded Age was not laissez-faire. So first of all, while there might have been little regulation, there wasn't no regulation. If we think about, for example, time zones, okay, that time zones were created, so were created on a national level, okay, and that is, of course, that is the railroads, okay, because you can't exactly just let the train just go whenever you want or something like that, right? The trains kind of have to run on time. And so, the creation of time zones, before that, local communities just kind of decided what time it was. Like, what time is it? Well, the sun's right ahead. That's noon. Okay. Set your watches right there. But you've got to create national time zones. So the Interstate Commerce Act, which regulated the railroads, the Sherman Antitrust Act, which may not have been as, comprehensive and big as the Clayton Antitrust Act, but still this marks major legislation. This marks the first legislation of its kind, okay? So that is important. Now, transcontinental railroad subsidies, not laissez-faire. So again, government policy is aimed at economic growth and support for big business, which means, subsidizing here, maybe doing some minimal regulations there, and also protective tariffs. That is not laissez-faire, very far from it, because protective tariffs, that's something that is going to create, it's going to artificially inflate the price of foreign goods. Remember the nullification crisis. And then, of course, protective tariffs. That's part of Henry Clay's American system. We'll get to that in a second. The gold standard, government regulating the currency and tying it to gold. The toleration of corruption and fraud, something like the credit mobilier scandal, all of the grant administration scandals. There's a whole Wikipedia page. So as far as that goes, there are all of these scandals going on, and that's really like laissez-faire is not toleration of corruption and fraud. So I go into thesis statements. Now, the strike breaking, that's another thing. When the federal government decided to break up the Great Railroad Strike and the Pullman Strike with military force to put Eugene V. Debs in jail, that was not laissez-faire. So, we've got, theses. I've got a complex thesis. So with that, I go into a little bit of strategizing in terms of creating a thesis. So with that, the Gilded Age is all about the rise of big business and, this economic growth in the United States. Okay, thinking in terms of economic growth. And so with that, Going into the next thing now, of course, I guess I mentioned Henry Clay and Henry Clay's American system. So with that, let me just run over here and pull something up. Okay, so I'm going to pull that up, and then let's go ahead and just have a quick chat about Henry Clay's American system. And I need to make sure, let's see. So where did we get this? The Gilded Age. Excellent. Okay, so going from there, just taking a little step back and thinking about, Henry Clay is kind of setting the setting the tone for the Gilded Age. Okay, and let's see. So American system. Okay, so Henry Clay's American system. Okay, so we want to open the file location there, and there we go. Let me go ahead and grab my guitar, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, let's have a little note here. Okay, what? Okay, so great. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at this. All right, need to go ahead and get the screen sharing again. All right, so Henry Clay's American system. All right, so this is basically kind of a creature of the War of 1812 because, before the War of 1812, Jefferson, he said that, we just need to do trade. That's going to be enough, right? And so the War of 1812, though, it convinced some people like Henry Clay, who was a war hawk, that maybe we shouldn't be, maybe we shouldn't be too dependent on Europe, okay, for our economy, because sometimes Europeans like to kill each other. And when Europeans start killing each other, then that can create a problem for our economy. So Henry Clay, the American system, NIP, okay, so NIP, if you want to remember it, NIP, because there are three things here: national bank, internal improvements, protective tariff, okay? And again, does that sound Hamiltonian? You bet it does. All of this stuff is Hamiltonian. And this is about promoting self-sufficiency in the United States, independence from Europe, developing Western lands, and basically creating an American economy that is going to, basically, tie the sections together and not be dependent on Europe. Now, the problem here is for the South, which is growing cash crops and trading them with Europe, that wasn't going so well. Now, do y'all want to hear me sing a song about the American system? Let's see in the chat. Do y'all want to hear me sing a song about the American system? Or are you thinking that me when Europeans start killing each other? All right. So as far as that goes, yes, the question bubble, very good. Y'all remember that. Mohandas is here. Oh my goodness. You know what, Mohandas? I am going to, let's see, I'm going to invite you on stage. Okay, I'm going to invite Mohandas on stage. Chet has been here as well. Chet, you have been a regular presence over here, and history is his passion. Let's go ahead and invite Chet to the stage as well. Okay, so I've got a few folks, Mohandas and Chet. Let me go ahead and look at the YouTube chat. Y'all want to hear a song? Okay, YouTube wants to hear a song. All right, so excellent. So let's go ahead and go over the American system song. All right, so going with that, ladies and gentlemen, a little song about Henry Clay's American system. If you want to hear the recorded version, it is on my SoundCloud. And yes, I do have a SoundCloud, okay? So as far as that, and to the tune of Adam Sandler's classic Lunch Lady Land. Let me smoke. All right, who have we got here? Who have we got here? I heard somebody.
Hey.
Is that Mohandas or Chat?
Me, Chat.
Chat, nice to see you, Chat. All right, so I've got.
This is a dream come true.
This is a dream come true.
We got Chat and
you carried me through
Mohandas.
Euro, now you're carrying me through APUSH.
Y'all ready? So let's go ahead and y'all mute. Okay, let's go ahead and mute. And then I'll sing the song, and we can see their reactions, right? They can do a little reaction here to the song. All right, so excellent. Let's go ahead and get this going. Woke up in the morning after a night at the saloon. Went to the House of Representatives with my friend John C. Calhoun. This embargo isn't helping us protect ourselves. But Madison finally listened, and now we're in the War of 1812. you weren't as prepared for war as I thought we might have been. The British burned down the White House, much to our chagrin. Now it ended well at New Orleans. Yeah, that was quite a win. But for our economic future, we need to focus within. Yesterday's economy was based on foreign trade. If we can achieve economic independence, then we'll have it made. Players, we'll have it made. All right, sing along with me. Internal improvements, national bank, national bank, national bank. Internal improvements, national bank. Protective tariff, ride some steamy boats, steamy boats, yeah. Steamy boats, steamy boats, build some western roads, western roads, yeah. Western roads, west. Well, I dreamt one morning that I woke up to see the United States had built a national economy. Jimmy signed into law the Second National Bank, supported economic growth, and y'all got Henry Clay to thank. Then internal improvements, bridges, roads, and canals to connect all the sections, gonna make us all pals. A protective tariff to build home industry. Our economy won't have to count on British sympathy. Why cross the Atlantic, travel out of our zone when we can build factories, make stuff right here at home? I know the South's not eager, no, they're not on my side, because they grow cotton for the world and they ship it far and wide. In 1828, they said that tariff's too high, and John C. turned on me and Carolina nullified. But I said, Calhoun, you've got nothing to fear. Ship your cotton up north and we'll process it here. The American system is pursuing a goal to build a home economy free from foreign control and ride some steamy boats, steamy boats, yeah. Steamy boats, steamy boats, and build some western roads, western roads, yeah. Western roads, west. Internal improvements, national bank, national bank, national bank. Internal improvements, national bank. Protective tariff, ride some steamy boats, steamy boats, yeah. Steamy boats, steamy boats, and build some western roads, western roads, yeah. Western roads, west, build some western roads. All right. One of these days, somebody's going to do a big super chat, and I'm going to be able to afford to just like bust my guitar up or something like that. So with that, we've got the American System song. All right, we got Mohandas and Chet here. Let's go ahead and chat with Mohandas and Chet. Y'all got some questions for us?
First off, I just want to say it's nice to meet you, Mohandas. First time meeting you.
You too.
First,
but I really want to say,
I
really want to say that I want to say first off, before I say anything, this shout out goes to Mr. Spielberger. He was my Euro teacher, who sadly he's in back surgery, so he's out for the rest of the year. So I'm gonna show this one day. I'm gonna show this to Mr. Spielberger. Thank you, Mr. Spielberger, for introducing me to this wonderful man, Tom Richey. Tom, I just want to say thank you so much for everything you've done for me and my peers here at Amherst Central High School. You've definitely carried me throughout Euro. You've carried me throughout APUSH, all right? You're helping me and my friends, and you've inspired myself to like help. I've been doing like, I remember on your TikTok you did a Euro minute, and I've been doing my own little Snapchat stories called APUSH minutes to help my friends, and it's really been helping them.
Nice. Go ahead and put that snap in the chat there. And in chat, I'm going to go ahead and like pull a Kanye and just kind of interrupt you there, because they're going to be like, "Oh, let's get to the next question." Okay, but we appreciate this, Chet. What is your question for some APUSH review here tonight?
I would a lot of people come to me asking about the progressive era. I just wanted to, my question for you is, what would you say is the most important part of the progressive era? Like from the 1890s.
So yeah, and I think given that we just like talked about the Gilded Age, that's a great time to segue into the progressive era, okay? Because the progressive era, I'm trying to move this chair And maybe Frederick Taylor from the progressive era with scientific management could give me a more efficient way to do that. So with that, the progressive era, the biggest shift there is the shift from government support for business. So in the Gilded Age, policy was all about government support for business. And in the progressive era, it's like, the government needs to support business. But at the same time, you see that Bosses of the Senate cartoon where, Americans got the idea that, it can go too far one way, where the government is so obsessed with supporting business that we forget that, okay, it's not the only thing that we have here to do, right? That we have other things that are important to do. So that during the Gilded Age, a lot of Americans, they got tired of, and again, this isn't necessarily laissez-faire. This is the idea that these businesses are taking over the government, and that, the Senate, that they answer to, these big business people rather than to the American people. So one of the things about this cartoon, you see all of these monopolists coming in, the little bitty senators, the big monopolists, and the people's entrance back here is closed. And it says up here, this is a Senate of the monopolists, by the monopolists, for the monopolists. And so you can see in this cartoon the popular outcry for some sort of reform, okay? And so the biggest thing about this is an orientation that goes more toward the regulation of business than it does toward the the government support for business. And also we could look at this as a causal factor in the 17th Amendment. Now I've got a video lecture that you might want to check out tonight on the progressive era amendments, the 16th Amendment, the income tax, which of course is taxing incomes, especially high incomes. And then we've got the 17th Amendment. That is the 17th Amendment, of course, the direct election of senators. The progressives, they believe in popular democracy. So regulating business, popular democracy, organizing society based on scientific principles and moral improvement. So we look at the 18th Amendment, that failed experiment with prohibition, where it was like, okay, we can get the government to, just to pay, the government to just ban alcohol, which I think science shows definitively alcohol is not good for you. Okay, kids, stay off drugs, stay off alcohol, all of that kind of stuff, because it's really not good for you. And so with that, we want to keep that in mind, that this is something that is a that is a thing. But then again, we learn from here too that that this is something that is going to, you can't just tell people they can't do something, that you do have. I mean, this is America, and we have to think in terms of freedom as well. Okay. So one thing to note in terms of and then the 19th Amendment, which is women's suffrage. Okay. So note here now, of course, women's suffrage, that's popular democracy. But also when we think about, women's suffrage now, ladies and gentlemen, just remember, if we see people spamming like Asia, you've been noticed, but at the same time, a big comment like that is trying to take over the chat, that's going to be deleted. If it continues, you'll be banned from the chat. You'll still be able to watch, you'll just be banned from the chat. So y'all just keep that noted. So, noted. So with that, when we're thinking about women voting, not only does that expand democracy, but women are demographically, now not all, but demographically more likely to consider social and moral issues while voting, while men are more likely to think totally about fiscal issues, taxes and spending. So that does make some changes in the, in the way that people vote and the way that politicians have to campaign, that government becomes more morally conscious. As far as legislation, the Pure Food and Drug Act, the Meat Inspection Act, Teddy Roosevelt's Meat Inspection Act, the muckrakers, you had Upton Sinclair, and Upton Sinclair is writing this book, The Jungle. He's a socialist, and he's like, you know what? People are going to read this book, and they're going to be like, oh my goodness, immigrant poverty is so terrible. We got to do something to help these impoverished immigrants. Does that sound like America? They read it, and then they're like, is my meat really that dirty? The whole thing about immigrant poverty just gets lost on people. And so it's like, hey, Is my meat really that dirty? The government needs to do something about that. Make sure my meat's not dirty. Meat Inspection Act. So Pure Food and Drug Act, which creates the FDA, Meat Inspection Act. So these are things that are changing the regulatory landscape. All right. So Chet, thank you so much for that question. And Mohandas, you've been here over and over again, man. So let's add, what do you have on your mind for this exam tomorrow?
I just want to say that was a beautiful song.
Oh, thank you. Keep the remarks brief though, because these people will get very impatient. Yeah. Okay, they want to get right into it.
I just want to shout out Mr. Howard. He's taught me so well this semester. I don't really have a question, but I just want to say if I get a 5, I'll let you know.
All right, please do, Mohandas. And remember, at Tom Richey on Instagram, I'll do some Instagram shout outs before this is all over. So y'all make sure to get in touch with me there. And Mohandas, make sure I follow you back, man, because you have been here. Thank y'all, Chet, Mohandas. Thank y'all so much. Y'all wave goodbye there. And they got those shout outs there.
One more thing. Yes, shout out to my APUSH teacher, Mr. Jones. Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Yes, the APUSH teacher should get a shout out too. Thank you, Mr. Jones. All right, and we love this Euro teacher you mentioned as well. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, let's take a look here. And again, let me just run over the YouTube chat. Who did more for the environment, Roosevelt or Nixon? Now, Dan Prater, you've got a great question on the on the YouTube. Okay, that is a great question. And again, Instagram shout outs are coming at some point at Tom Richey. Okay, so as far as that goes, those are coming at Tom Richey. And so, when we think about who did more for the environment, Teddy Roosevelt or Nixon. One thing that's very interesting when you look at the realignment of the Republican Party, like today, conservative Republicans are not very likely. Conservative Republicans are not very likely to be a big fan of a lot of environmental regulation. But, Richard Nixon signed the Clean Air and Water Act. Okay. Richard Nixon signed, or I think those are 2 acts. I forget it, 1 or 2, but, that's not going to be a big thing, whether it's 1 or 2, but whether it's Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act or the Clean Air and Water Act, main thing, Richard Nixon is the person who signed this environmental legislation, and also created the EPA by executive order, the Environmental Protection Agency. So Richard Nixon, Teddy Roosevelt is doing his conservation. So we also want to note that, Nixon, while, a lot of time, some of the things that Nixon did are more like in the conservative direction, we want to note that it was Richard Nixon who was like one of the, the first president that did a lot for the environment in the, in this early period. And remember, that can go back when you think just like the muckrakers of the progressive era, Rachel Carson's Silent Spring, which is going into like DDT and all of that kind of, basically like, look, DDT is bad. Okay. She writes there. And a lot of people are getting into, getting into that. So going from, going from that, let's go ahead and and look at that. And going into, let's see, we've got Leela Nugent, we've got Gus to plug, Thankful Outlander. Okay, so as far as that, I will go once in a while and do. Oh, we've got Ann Gregory, we've got Eva Heatherly, we've got the Balm 101, File Ping. Then we've got Michael O'Quint, Katie Reeves. Okay, thank y'all so much for the Instagram follows there. So as far as that goes, we want to note that yes, Richard Nixon was an environmental president. Okay, did things for the environment. So as far as that goes, we've got a question about the Cold War. Okay, so Carson is asking a question about the Cold War, which, remember, the Cold War, there are a few things that I would point out here. First of all, the foundation of this is the Truman Doctrine. Okay, so after World War II, of course, we were, the big three. You had Stalin from the Soviet Union, Churchill from Britain, and then FDR from the United States. He dies, Truman takes his place, right? But with that, the Soviets were our allies against Hitler in World War II. But the issue is that, when Stalin says, hey, I need a sphere of influence in Eastern Europe, he didn't quite come out and say, now, he's a communist. I think we could have known something like that was coming, but Stalin didn't say, let me keep them from ever having free elections. Let me put Soviet dominated governments there. Let me not let these people leave, okay? Let me basically force communism on East Germany, Czechoslovakia, Romania, and all of these other countries in the Eastern Bloc. Like these Eastern Bloc Warsaw Pact countries, these are basically dominated by the Soviet Union this time. So the Cold War, first of all, it represents a major turning point in American foreign policy, okay? Because before that, Washington's farewell address. Now, let me just note this. Just about any prompt for the DBQ or LEQ that has to do with foreign policy, Washington's farewell address is something, Washington's farewell address or his neutrality proclamation, Washington's proclamation of neutrality, the neutrality policy, that is the natural foreign policy of the United States. But at the time of the Cold War, the United States is like, look, if somebody doesn't stand up to the Soviet Union, then nobody's going to be able to do it. The United States was the only democratic country that really had enough the military, that its economy and infrastructure had not been wrecked. So the United States comes in with the Marshall Plan, you know, just handing out all that money so that Europeans can rebuild their economy and don't become communist, Western Europe, because if any of you become communist, stops, okay? So the Marshall Plan or the European Recovery Plan. So the United States is building basically an alliance with Western Europe, which actually gets institutionalized with NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Now, check this out. If you want to remember that, North Atlantic Treaty Organization. That makes an O, okay? An organization, like a group of people sitting around a table together. North Atlantic Water Treaty, we just signed, an organization, NATO. So the North Atlantic, basically you've got the United States and Canada allying themselves with Britain, France, Denmark, then you've got, West Germany and Italy and the Benelux countries, basically all coming together, Belgium, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg, all coming together and saying that an attack on any one of us is an attack on all of us, okay? That essentially that the United States, if any of these countries is invaded or messed with in any way, we consider that an attack on the United States. So the Truman Doctrine, now, of course, there's NATO, North Atlantic, okay, but the United States starts to kind of expand this as well. Harry Truman sees that there are attempted communist insurgencies in Greece and Turkey, which are in the Balkans, like southeastern Europe and Turkey going into Asia, that Greece shares a border with Eastern Bloc countries such as Bulgaria, and then Turkey shares a border with the Soviet Union. So there are attempts to try to replace these, Western aligned governments in Greece and Turkey. And Truman says in the Truman Doctrine, we will not allow that to happen. Okay, so, Greece and Turkey, the United States says we will help them to keep communism out. We let them into NATO as well. That's the Truman Doctrine, Greece and Turkey. Now, when we're going over doctrines, the Eisenhower Doctrine, okay, which enforces containment. Now, remember, kind of like free soil. In the 1850s, Abraham Lincoln was not an abolitionist. He said, look, I don't like slavery. We're going to keep it in the South. So the Truman Doctrine, containment. We don't like communism, but we're not going to go in there and invade those communist countries, but we are going to stop it from spreading. And so the Eisenhower Doctrine basically takes the Truman Doctrine and it then, it extends it into the Middle East, okay? It extends the Truman Doctrine into the Middle East that is identifying, I'd say the Eisenhower Doctrine is the first time where the Middle East is being identified as a strategic region, okay? It is a strategic region. So that's something to keep that in mind as well. And then as we go into like the Nixon Doctrine, after the United States had gotten so involved in Vietnam, where we had, Eisenhower warned us about the military industrial complex. Now, one thing to note, when Eisenhower was leaving the presidency in 1961, Eisenhower's like, look, I understand that communism's a threat, but here's the potential problem. There's never a point where the military says, thank you, Congress, you've given us enough money to do what we need to do. There's never a point where the defense industry says, thank you, American taxpayer. You have given us what we need to do. They're always going to be asking for more, always. And so Eisenhower on his way out says, you got to be careful, because the military, if the civilian government does not keep the military in check, things are going to get out of control. Which the thing is, when you go to Vietnam, a country with like 16 million people, and by 1968, we've got over 500,000 Americans there. And so the military just kept saying, we need this. Johnson says, sure, you get that. We need this. Sure, you get that. And so by the time Nixon comes in, Nixon, is basically forced by public opinion to adopt a policy of Vietnamization. Okay. And basically, we're turning over the Vietnam War to the South Vietnamese themselves. And the Nixon Doctrine basically says, okay, money, yes. Military, yes. Men, no. Okay, so we will money, military, men. Okay, so as far as that goes, I can't think of a word for people in general. Not trying to be politically incorrect or anything like that, but can't think of a word for people in general that starts with an M. So money, yes. Military equipment, yes. Men, no. We will not send troops to your country. All right. That you will have to take care of the fighting, but we will help you with money. We will help you with military equipment. Sounds kind of like what we're doing in Ukraine right now, and again, to try to contain Russian expansion. You could look at this as now, don't try casually to make comparisons to current events, but if you could intelligently take what's going on in Ukraine right now and, be able to put it into a narrative of the United States and Western Europe, making it a priority to halt Russian expansion and Russian influence, that's something that could work if done well. Okay. And could help establish complex understanding. So that's something that you want to consider there. Okay. So then we want to think about Jimmy Carter, the human rights foreign policy, which Carter's kind of going in a more Wilsonian direction, that our foreign policy needs to do the right thing. Now, Reagan, roll back. Okay. Roll back Reagan. It starts with an R, right? Roll back Reagan. Reagan says that we are going to roll back communism. Okay. So let's see. Okay, so basically, like when we think about what's going on in Nicaragua and Latin America, like Reagan says, like Kennedy in the Cuban Missile Crisis had to say, we won't invade Cuba and we won't mess with Cuba anymore. But Reagan's like, look, when these leftists take over in Nicaragua, Reagan's like, look, we got to aid the Contras. Congress won't let us do it. Well, sell some arms to the Iranians, keep it on the DL. We're going to send that money to the right-wing Contras. So Reagan's like, look, we want to oppose these leftist, Marxist, communist governments. And then also when Reagan says, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. Okay. So as far as that goes, as far as that, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. That is rollback. Okay. Kennedy, when he gave his Ich bin ein Berliner speech. Okay. So with that, when he gives his Ich bin ein Berliner speech, Kennedy, doesn't say, now he pokes fun at like, hey, democracy's not perfect and freedom isn't perfect, but we don't have to build a wall to keep our people from leaving. Okay. And so Kennedy kind of pokes fun at the Berlin Wall. But at the same time, he doesn't say to tear it down, because that is going to go against the containment policy. So Reagan goes a step further and wants to roll this back. Okay. So as far as what we're looking at here, those are some things we might want to know for the test. So let me just go ahead and go over the YouTube chat. Olivia, I would not say that Grover Cleveland's presidency is a big part of this exam. Part of what I do here is remind you of what, not to look at so much, okay? Reconstruction, I would say, Ava, something that I would think about with Reconstruction is to consider when we're looking at Reconstruction is to consider that, the amendments, 13th, 14th, 15th, okay? Also presidential Reconstruction versus radical or congressional Reconstruction. So again, Lincoln presidential Reconstruction. Let's let the South back in. 10% plan, like those car ads, no money down, no credit, bad credit, no problem. All right. So Lincoln, the discount Reconstruction, he says, look, 13th Amendment, just abolish slavery. Now, one thing that I'll do in class is I'll ask, like, okay, what did the 13th Amendment do? They say abolish slavery. What else did the 13th Amendment do? Awkward pause, followed by students trying to guess things. And then finally, I'm like, nothing. The 13th Amendment did nothing except abolish slavery. And that's what Abraham Lincoln had in mind for Reconstruction. That technically, since, Lincoln was a lawyer, he says technically the South never left the Union because secession's illegal. And so we need to just get them back in here. As long as they've abolished slavery, whatever, the rest is their business, okay? But then radical Republicans, they're looking at the black codes, race riots. They think that these Southerners are unrepentant for their secession and that they need to be taught a lesson. And so, the radical Republicans, they say, look, we need the 14th Amendment, which first of all gives birthright citizenship, okay? That it says that everyone born in this country is a citizen of this country and entitled to the equal protection of the laws. Now, what this does, it's got a couple targets because the Supreme Court in Dred Scott had said, look, African Americans cannot be citizens. People of African descent cannot be U.S. citizens. And so the 14th Amendment says, yes, they can, okay? That anyone born here is a citizen. And then equal protection of the laws, okay? So that's the 14th Amendment. And then the 15th Amendment, which says that you can't bar someone from voting based on their race, color, or previous condition of servitude, okay? So that is going to be an important thing there, race, color, or previous condition of servitude. Now, when Reconstruction ends, radical Reconstruction ends after the Compromise of 1877, they'll get more creative. The 15th Amendment doesn't say you can't tell somebody they can't vote because they can't read. You can't tell somebody they can't vote because, well, your grandfather couldn't vote. Or you can't tell somebody they can't vote because you haven't paid your poll tax, okay? So, and these things, basically, after Reconstruction's over, the federal government kind of turns a blind eye. So that's an important thing to note here. So as far as that goes, those are some things that I would remember in terms of Reconstruction. Okay, so those are some things that we might note here. Yeah, confidence is key. Mohandas, I think that this is a great thing you're saying here. Confidence is key. When you go into that exam tomorrow, before you open up that test booklet, then say to yourself, I am the world's greatest expert in United States history. And then, okay, then go ahead and, say that, go start your test. I am the world's greatest expert in U.S. history. Then take your test. It is going to decrease second guessing. You'll get a good laugh, all of that. And if you're really that bad in U.S. history that you're not really an expert and you're going to fail anyway, then confidence isn't going to hurt you because you're going to fail whether you're confident or not. But if you're bringing to the table what you need to pass, then what's going to happen is that, you are going to do better because you went in with confidence. So tell yourself, I am the world's greatest expert in U.S. history. All right. So, what we've got here is the fireside chat at 11 p.m. Now, this is not for everybody. Again, this could be a very small group. I'm just going to put a little link there in the chats, in the YouTube chat. It's already there, pinned in the chat. And of course, there's a link in the description. So the fireside chat, for those of you who are in the, more Western time zones, or you just know, like, I'm not going to go to sleep, but whatever. It's going to be a very small audience. I've got some other Euro things I'm going to have to do. So with that, the fireside chat at 11. Now, also, there is a link in the description. There is a link into the description on YouTube that goes into the spring symposium. And that is for those of you who, are saying that, like, look, I'm still struggling with essays and that sort of thing. Okay. So the APUSH spring symposium, there is a link in the YouTube chat, and I'll just take you on a quick thing here. That basically there are 4 sessions, okay, and each of them focuses on a different section of the exam. Now that's the fireside chat that's going to be happening later, and then you had short answer question, short answer questions, long essay questions, document-based questions, and then of course there was the multiple choice strategy. So there are these things, and then if you use the coupon code Classroom 10, you get all of that for just $10, okay, when the original price was $40. That's for those of you who still need some in-depth kind of things there. I've got that Symposium super discounted. So Spring Symposium, okay, so Posium, and of course, remember Classroom 10, okay? That's something, and again, that's for those of you who are still like, hey, I don't know, I've still got to make sure I know how to write these essays. And with that, of course, Romulus APUSH Review, okay? That is just an app that's available at the App Store. And so with that, I'm about to go to Marco Learning's channel. So remember Romulus APUSH Review, it's just a simple little trivia app. It's not stimulus based, it's just drilling while you're getting ready for the exam, and could very well help you on the SAQ and the LEQ and even on the DDQ. So with that, I'm about to go to youtube.com/Marco Learning. So I'm going to go to Marco Learning's channel, and we're going to start in just a second here. And that's actually going to be happening the APUSH Crunch session. And it is Star Wars Day, so may the 4th be with you. So this is something that is just about to begin. I'm about to go off of here, and I'm going to go into this here. Looks like Elroy is already waiting for us. Awesome, Elroy. And so we've got folks waiting there, and this is happening. If you go to Marco Learning's channel, there's me and Baby Yoda about to go live there on Marco Learning's channel. So let's go ahead and so the next stream, okay? So the next stream here is at Marco Learning. I'm going to go ahead and put that in the chat, okay? And that's going to be about a half-hour stream, and we'll continue to do some Q&A. So y'all got this, ladies and gentlemen, and see you on the other side, Mohandas. And as far as that goes, yes, Marco Learning also has some one-pagers for each period. So Pranava, good luck to you and your classmates tomorrow. Now, another thing about the Spring Symposium, if you get that Spring Symposium, then you can share, there's a link that you can share it with like your classmates and your friends, okay? Just like send it out there. Y'all can all look at it. It's not like $10 for an individual, like $10 gets you and your friends in there. So again, ladies and gentlemen, I'm about to go to Marco Learning. Let me go ahead and make a little note here. Okay, so let's go to Marco Learning. Okay, so we're going to go with that and go ahead and put that there. And so with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm heading over now to Marco Learning's channel. Romulus APUSH Review is the app. Thank y'all for asking there. You just go to the App Store, Romulus APUSH, or if you put in APUSH Review, you'll see it. So heading over to Marco Learning. I'll see you there probably in about 2 minutes. It is always a pleasure, ladies and gentlemen.